Jatakas, or Tales of the Buddha's Past Lives, are part of the 5th Nikaya collection of the Sutra Pitaka, or Basket of Teaching, of the Pali Canon. The Jatakas were handed down orally at first, but their vast popularity ensured their commitment to a more permanent form. The Gathas are the verses spoken by the Buddha while still a bodhisattva in the tales. The original Jataka book consisted only of Gathas, which were written down in the 1st century before the Common Era. A commentary on these, containing the stories which they were intended to illustrate, was written later in Sinhalese and translated into Pali around 430 Common Era. Within the Pali tradition, there are many Jatakas that were composed later, but these are treated as a separate category from the official Jataka stories, which were formally canonized centuries earlier. Through stories from the Buddha's past lives, the Jatakas illustrate the virtues by which Buddhists are encouraged to live.
Perhaps the most fascinating part of the Jataka tales is that Buddha was not only human in his former lives, he also took the form of many animals. Interestingly enough, it is noted that within the stories involving animals there is significantly less ill will encountered than within stories involving humans. 3 common themes are noticed within the stories involving Buddha as an animal: friendship, sacrifice, and intellect. Although there is mixed information on how many Jataka tales there really are, the Pali version holds 550 tales total. These tales, nonetheless, do have a specific organization to them. According to Powell, they are arranged in 22 different books, called nipadas, divided based on the length of the gatha within the tale. Gathas are, again, stanzas of prose which come from the Buddha's mouth, either at a point when the Buddha has been enlightened or at a point before his enlightenment. It is even said that originally the tales were comprised only of gathas, and that the rest of the stories have evolved tremendously by oral tradition, although some would argue that not enough evidence exists to support this idea. The nipadas are then divided into vagas, which are sets of 10 stories, named after the first story of the set. Naturally, there are introductions, including a lengthy introduction to the entire Jataka collection, named the Dadana, and also a preamble to each story which explains the context of the preaching of that particular story, entitled the Pakhu Navatu. And finally, there is a summary after each story, which states the moral of the story and the parties involved.
In modern times, the Jataka are mainly associated with the Theravada branch of Buddhism. While they may be associated with the more conservative branch, the Jataka tales are not very important Buddhist texts in modern times and are not considered to be the actual word of Buddha. Instead, the main use of the Jataka tales is to teach moral guidelines and is celebrated as part of the Buddhist heritage. In fact, in some Buddhist countries, some of the Jataka tales are recreated in dance, song, or informal recitations. The Jataka tales may also have affected modern Western society. It is believed that due to many visits from the Silk Road and early Western society, like the Greek king Menander, the Jataka's tales were spread out throughout the world, but they were changed along the way, and have become the basis for many similar Western stories, such as Aesop's Fables, Sinbad the Sailor, and the Arabian Nights.
The Hungry Tigress Jataka is among the most important of the Jataka tales because it exemplifies compassion and self-sacrifice. In the story, the Bodhisattva was born into a family of scholars. He mastered his studies but soon became disillusioned with the worldly life and renounced it for the spiritual one. In time, he became the guru of several ascetics. One day, at the top of a tall hill, he and his disciple Ahita saw a hungry tigress lurking, ready to eat her own cubs. The Bodhisattva sent Ahita away. Once his disciple had left, the guru jumped off the hill and landed in front of the tigress. The tigress feasted upon him with her cubs. Ahita returned and was surprised to see his master gone and the tigers looking well-fed and happy. He soon saw the remains of the Bodhisattva and knew he had been sent away so his master could make the great act of charity. He bowed his head out of reverence for his guru who had exemplified the supreme sacrifice. Another key tale is the ship's captain Jataka. In this life, the Bodhisattva was a ferry captain whose boat was carrying 500 bodhisattvas in disguise. A robber on board was planning to kill everyone to steal the ship's cargo. The captain saw the man's intention and realized this crime would result in eons of torment for the murderer. Out of compassion, he killed the robber to prevent him from experiencing that terrible karmic suffering. This tale thus exemplifies a different kind of self-sacrifice on the Buddha's part. He was willing to commit murder and bring horrible suffering onto himself to prevent far greater suffering of the would-be thief and murderer on board. Jataka 305, told by Buddha about the rebuking of sin, also demonstrates the importance of living virtuously. In this life, Buddha was the son in a Brahmin family. He was studying under a world-renowned professor who decided to test his pupil's merit and give his daughter in marriage to the one that most excelled in virtue. The teacher told his students he wanted to give his daughter in marriage but needed proper dresses and ornaments for her. He told them to steal some and bring them to him, but that he would refuse anything the other students saw them steal. The Bodhisattva, unlike the others, stole nothing. When the teacher asked him why, he said, "You accept nothing unless it is taken secretly, but I find there is no such thing as secrecy and wrongdoing." To illustrate this, he spoke the following stanza. "In sooth, there is no act of sin that in this world may hidden lie. That which the fool a secret deems, the spirits of the wood espy. Concealment nowhere may be found, nor can a void exist for me. Even where no being is in sight, while I am there, no void can be." The teacher was impressed. He confessed to his students that there was no lack of wealth in his house. He had told them to steal in order to find the most virtuous youth to marry his daughter. The Bodhisattva alone had shown himself to be worthy. The teacher gave the Bodhisattva his daughter's hand and told the other students to return what they had stolen. The tale thus demonstrates the rewards of a virtuous life. Another tale whose primary message is to live virtuously is Jataka 494. In this Jataka, Buddha was King Sadina, a very virtuous man. He gave alms generously, kept the 5 virtues, and observed the fast day vows. Sadina was so virtuous that all the gods in heaven wanted to meet him. Saka, king of the gods, commanded Matali to take his chariot and bring Sadina to them. Sadina went and dwelled in the city of gods for 700 years, enjoying felicity and immortal pleasures. Then Sadina's merit was exhausted in that character in heaven. Dissatisfaction arose in him. Saka told Sadina that his good deeds were exhausted and his merit was all done, and asked him to stay and continue enjoying immortal pleasures with the gods. The Bodhisattva refused, saying he did not want to be happy because of blessings received from another. He would rather stand on his own good deeds and follow virtue to be happy. He told Saka, "I'll go and do much good to men, give alms throughout the land, will follow virtue, exercise control and self-command. He that so acts is happy, and fears no remorse at hand." So Saka had Matali bring Sadina back to the royal park. Narada, Sadina's direct descendant, was then king. He told Sadina to accept his rightful realm and be king once more. Sadina refused, saying he had seen the heavens and felt more joys than human. He had come back down, he explained, to do deeds of virtue. He would live a holy life, and he wanted no crown. He was entering the path the Buddhas demonstrate, the path that never leads to woe. Sadina told Narada that he wished only to distribute the alms given during his 700 years of absence. He did so, then died, and was born in the heaven of the 33. Buddha told this story of his past life to his followers and ended it by saying, "Such is the performance of the holy day vows which it is duty to keep." Virtue, especially honesty, is the theme of yet another important Jataka, number 431. Before telling this tale, the Buddha had seen a brother begin to backslide after feeling passion from seeing a woman. Buddha told him, "Sin, brother, is destructive of virtue and insipid withal, and causes a man to be reborn in hell." He then told his followers the tale, in which the Bodhisattva was born into a wealthy Brahmin family and was called Harita. After his father's death, Harita realized he too must die one day. Alarmed by this fear of death, he gave great gifts and entered the Himalaya country to adopt the religious life. He lived there for a long time. One day he left the mountain to get salt and vinegar, and eventually he reached Benares, where he dwelt in the royal park. The king was exceedingly pleased with him, and so built him quarters in the park and gave him the keeper of the park as his attendant. Harita lived there 12 years, eating in the palace daily.